So if you guys didn't know, I really like Godzilla, and one of my favourite memories was from my 7th birthday all the way back in 1936, when I received a brand new GameCube and a copy of Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee from Pipeworks Studios. I was so happy that I then played it for so long that my parents thought I might be dead. I remember going through the missions and being ecstatic as I unlocked all the monsters that I'd grown to love throughout the movies. I had such a fun time battling my friends on the versus mode and destroying cities to beat their high score. Very few games have even come close to the experience that gave me, which was the ability to fully interact with the kaiju from the movies that I was essentially raised by. Not far in the future, they then released Godzilla Save the Earth, which had even more monsters to play as, including my favourite, Space Godzilla, and also had even more cities that you could flatten, with more modes and greater level variety. It was a step up in almost every way. Another couple years later, we'd receive the last of the trilogy of Pipeworks Godzilla games with Godzilla Unleashed. And whilst many people consider it the weakest of the trilogy, I still love it for shaking things up a bit by giving the arenas an apocalyptic style that gave the game a more epic scale, as well as, of course, giving me even more monsters to play as, on the Wii version at least. It also had a kick-ass soundtrack. But that's not all the monster games there were. There was also War of the Monsters, a homage to giant monsters of the 50s that had you fighting other monsters that had mutated when aliens crash-landed on Earth. And don't forget Rampage, a game involving who can destroy the most buildings and get the highest score. These were games that were a big part of my childhood, and it's a shame that they've seemingly been lost to time as they're not being ported over to the current gen systems. Kids that are growing up loving the Monsterverse as their first introduction to Godzilla don't have any current-gen monster action games to sink their teeth into. Since Godzilla Unleashed released, there hasn't been many AAA giant monster games. There's been a few smaller kaiju-based games, including a poorly received PS3 Godzilla game that released in 2014 and later on the PS4, as well as a below-average Pacific Rim game that was released on the Xbox 360 arcade. There's the EDF games that famously feature giant monsters as enemies, but you don't actually get to play as the kaiju, so it doesn't really satisfy your needs to play as a giant monster. So let's all look into the current state of kaiju games. Before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to Dangerville so you don't miss out on all the kaiju goodness we have coming in the future. We also have a Twitter account that is just begging to be followed, so head over to our social media page to keep up to date on everything happening on the channel, as well as news as soon as we hear about it. Now, onto the video. It's safe to say that we're all thinking, where have all the kaiju games gone? Well, the unfortunate reality is that the kaiju fandom is relatively niche. The cost to produce these big budget games simply outweigh the benefits that come from profits. Studios typically have to make 2.5 times their budget back, similar to movies. This is because they have to please the investors and cover marketing, as well as the costs of making future titles. It's a cycle that investors hope never ends, which is why the Call of Duty franchise has been going for so long. It's still bringing in the big bucks. It's also why we managed to get 3 Godzilla games, but they clearly had diminishing numbers because they weren't even able to release Godzilla Unleashed, which was released in 2007 on the PS3, a console which was released 1 year prior. So even at the prime of monster fighting games, they weren't doing as well as they should. Yet from the early 2000s towards the beginning of the 360 and PS3 era, monster games were popular. People were buying them. They had a place in a developing gaming market. However, the last generation of consoles started over 13 years ago, which definitely doesn't make me feel old, and a lot has changed since then to lead to a near halt of the development of kaiju games. Well, the industry has shifted to a greater focus on multiplayer games, games as a service, games that involve loot boxes and microtransactions, free-to-play games, which has pushed games like Godzilla Unleashed out of the market, as they weren't able to evolve and adapt to the changing industry. To AAA studios, kaiju games are simply too much of a risk to bother spending the millions of dollars it would cost to produce them. They could obviously change certain things to attempt to make them more profitable, such as removing a campaign, making it multiplayer only, filling it to the brim with microtransactions and loot boxes, but at that point you've lost what made the game special in the first place. Just look at what you got with Battlefront and compare it to what you had with the original. But there is an upside here. The lack of AAA developed kaiju games has seemingly led to indie developers rising up to give us exactly what kaiju fans have been asking for. At G-Fest this year, we had the opportunity to watch a panel about a brand new kaiju action game called Dawn of the Monsters from 13am Games. This game looks awesome, having an almost comic book style, taking influences from games like Mortal Kombat, God of War, and of course, Godzilla. It's going to have 4-player local co-op where you can team up to fight against hordes of aliens and other kaiju across multiple different worlds. It looks incredible, and that one's going to be releasing in 2020. And from Passion Republic Games, we have Gigabash, a kaiju brawler similar to the Pipeworks trilogy that looks super over the top, with gameplay showing entire towns being flattened, devastated by the giant monsters. With each kaiju having their own unique abilities, it looks like a load of fun, and it will be coming to PS4, PC, and Switch next year. We're also supposed to be receiving a Godzilla vs. Kong mobile game, but I'm not holding my breath on that being anything more than a cash grab. So whilst the current state of kaiju games looks relatively bleak, we still have some passionate developers pushing to bring fans something they'll hopefully enjoy. And if they prove to be successful, it hopefully means that bigger developers will pick up on the popularity to potentially produce some high-budget monster brawlers that we've been craving. We can only dream of what AAA produced kaiju games would be like in this day and age, but I'd hope for a bigger campaign with more cities to explore, maybe even open world, with an emphasis on physics. Thanks to advancements in hardware, you'd be able to simulate city destruction in a way to make you really feel like you're in the movies. Godzilla on PS4, whilst having better graphics than the PS2 games, really didn't improve on the city destruction. But having larger areas to explore, photorealistic graphics, and an updated roster of characters would be nice. My personal idea of a next-gen Godzilla game would be more ambitious. An open-world campaign, where you get to choose whether your monster is a protector or a destroyer, with a map similar to what's seen on Monarch's website that shows the regions currently under attack by giant monsters or areas that are home to military bases, where you have to travel to those areas to complete your goal. And as you advance, you evolve your kaiju. But to make fans of the traditional monster fighting games happy, there will be an online or offline mode where you simply get to choose the monsters you want, the area you want, and you get to set the rules, just like the old Pipework games. And maybe there'd even be a type of Forge mode where you can create your own arenas to destroy. Just imagine it. Seeing a big studio like CD Projekt Red or BioWare tackle the King of the Monsters would be a sight to behold. But for that we can only dream. For now we have these indie studios' valiant attempts at providing something of substance to fans of the kaiju genre, and I commend them for it and eagerly await for more info. Links to the games will be in the description. What would your ideal next-gen Godzilla game be? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more on the upcoming monster games, be sure to like this video so we know. Don't forget to subscribe and stomp on that notification button so you don't miss out on all that kaiju goodness. I've been Alistair from Dangerville, and we will see you in the next one.